Hello, Joyce. How are you?
Hello, how are you? It's great to be here.
It's great to be here. It's great to see you. And I want to thank you for agreeing to participate in this conversation with Black women who coach. My first question, as always, is tell me a little bit about yourself and what you
Well, where do I start?
do.
A little about myself. Well, I'm in Maryland. I currently reside in Maryland, and I am an executive leadership coach. And I will define that as well, because sometimes people confuse executive coaching with life coaching. And I actually do own my own company, which is Rise Above Coaching. That is actually based out of Maryland as well. And it is, it's a dynamic organization that does both coaching, and I'll talk a little bit about my background in HR, human resources, and that's kind of where my love for coaching kind of started. And so that's what I do. I work with organizations in terms of working with their leaders in terms of executive coaching. I also consult with a lot of the HR organizations in terms of if they want to work on like their strategy, if they want to work on their recruitment strategy, if they want to work on those high level organizational strategies that they want from a HR perspective. And I also do some work on I also do work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and racial equity, and so I consult on that as well. And it's so it's like a whole umbrella of things, but
Right.
really in the realm of coaching and HR and that kind of thing. So that's what I do.
All right. So, my next question for you is what inspired you to be a coach?
What inspired me to be a coach? That's such a great question. Well, it started at a very young age, because I knew that I had this gift of working with people.
Mhm.
And when I started my career, even in, like I said, I mentioned in human resources, kind of where I started my career after I finished school, everybody used to tell me like, you were so good at working with people. You were so good at seeing the best in people. You're so good at motivating people and just bringing people together. And that was one of the things that I thrived in.
Mhm.
And so, so that was one of my biggest inspiration on being, because growing up, people believed in me, and that was always, they always encouraged me. They were always there because I've always grew up in this very dynamic community that was there for each other. And that's kind of what I wanted to pass on if I ever did anything in my life. And that's what inspired me really to do my coaching. And it's, and just, getting, working with people, especially in the HR world, and knowing that, there's somebody that believes in them, and there's somebody who's there to guide them in whatever decision they want to make, not basically actually give them the answers, but basically just walk with them, so they could find their own answers. I think that's probably my biggest inspiration when it comes to coaching.
And so, why would you say, in your opinion, coaching is important and something that people should consider?
Yeah, coaching. I mean, I had a coach myself, and I think the act of having somebody dedicate time just to you for that particular time, is one of the most critical things. And then somebody there to be your accountability partner and to walk this journey with you is such a remarkable reward that you could get. And why do people need coaching? I mean, we all see ourselves, and we want to do bigger things in life. May it be both, career, whatever it is, family and everything. And sometimes we get in our own way of getting to where we want to get to.
Right.
And this is why I feel like this is why coaches are so critical in this world. And it's just, they allow you to transform yourself. And it's not just to that, because again, it's the coaching is not a touch thing. It's not like you're there for one day and you're out. You're working with this person for at least 6 months, right? And so it's more of a transformation. It's step by step. It's not like coming in here to change everything. Like, we try to really narrow down what feels important to that person, and we try to help them accomplish that. And that's why coaching is so important, because again, you find your own answers, but you have that support system as your coach to kind of walk you through that journey. And that's what makes coaching so so amazing.
Well, I love what you just said about you finding your own answers, because I think that's really critical in terms of the way that I've experienced it. As you said, you've been coached. I've also been coached as well. And the experience was really transformative for me. And it's kind of why I'm having these conversations and I'm trying to expose more people to Black women coaches, because I think that that was critical to the life that I get to live right now. But the important thing for people to understand is you have to do the work. You know, you're going to work with this person and they're going to, you know, help you to come to and to take the steps necessary to get to the place that you tell them you want to get to in the beginning. But you have to be willing to do the work. You can't think that this person's just going to come in and do the heavy lifting for you. You know what I mean? And I think it's important for people to understand that it is something that really takes time, right? And effort on part, both on your part specifically as the person being coached, as well as the coach themselves. Why would you say, well, my first question, the next question is, why does having a Black woman coach matter, in your opinion? I mean, I guess my question really should be, do you believe that having a Black woman coach matters? And if the answer is yes, then why? And if the answer is no, tell me that too.
Yes, I think it's, you know, and through my coaching and the clients I've worked with, you know, I think it has been such fresh of breath air when when they are actually saying, wow, I finally see somebody of color, right, you know, as a coach. Because and again, everybody's experience is different, but I believe it's unique because you share some type of common, common stuff. And I think it's also the relate, you could relate to them, again, not jumping into their story, not telling them what to do, but at least knowing that, wow, they see me. And that, maybe, let me say, that's the biggest thing, is knowing that somebody sees you for who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, and not really even put you in a box, right? It's like, okay, let's explore whatever, however you feel, because sometimes when you work with people and who have never had a Black coach or a woman coach, they have so much bottled in, right? And then they always talk about how they have been, or they're just being pushed to one direction rather than the direction they actually really want to take. So I
Right.
think, that whole experience is probably one of the most instrumental thing of having a Black coach, a woman of color coach.
Yeah.
And that
Well,
has been,
I think it's you know, I really think, and this is just my opinion,
yeah.
but I think it's a specific experience having a Black woman as a coach, because the thing is that, I will be honest, I have worked with people who are not white, but people of color who are not Black. And the experience was very similar to having a white coach, right? Because they do not have the same experience that I have in the workplace. Their experience could be different for whatever reason, right? And all of us experience, especially American society, in different ways. The discrimination is there, but it shows up in different ways. Racism is there, but it shows up in different ways, depending on where you sit, right? And there are people of color who choose to align themselves with the majority population for whatever reasons, in terms of how they think and what they do in these environments. And so some of my most negative experiences were with people who were persons of color, but were not Black and were not Black women, because the way that they choose to see these things are different, right?
Yeah.
So I actually have found that the experience that we have is very specific as Black women. And having a Black woman coach was very affirming for me, because the person was able to validate and not make me feel like I was crazy. And what I was saying was crazy, right? Because sometimes that's what they will make you feel. They will gaslight you so much that you begin to think that it's you when it's not. And so having someone that, as you said, sees you and is willing to point out the things that you are doing that are a problem, but also confirms that the structure and the environment in which you are operating is a problem as well, right? And that you have a right to, call that out, right? And that's a very important thing to have someone do for you. And I think even for people who are not Black, having a Black woman coach really can be a transformative experience for them as well, because there's a certain level of empathy that we have because of what we have experienced. So What would you say, in your opinion, qualifies, not qualifies, but what qualities would you say that a person should look for in their ideal coach? What would you tell a person who told you they were looking for a coach? What would you advise that they look for?
You know, that's such a good question. One to me is those intangibles, like a coach who shows empathy. I think that is something that is so critical when you're doing the coaching relationship, and also a coach who is authentic in terms of who is confident on who they are, and is not and we were talking about this earlier, turns off doesn't want to be in a space where you feel like you're in survival mode, right? Like you really have to follow your instincts on, wow, this is it. They hear me, they see me, right? So I think that's very critical for a coach. And then, like even the experience, like one of the questions that you ask is just even a coach who tells you a little bit about themselves, and not the book of where, hey, I'm an executive coach. I've gone to Georgetown and I've gone to all of this other things. I think that's all great, but you got to see where they start from in terms of who they are, because one of the most powerful things that I always say in coaching is that, you can't take your clients where you're not willing to go. And that is very authentic for someone to be able to show that when you're looking for a coach. And yeah, so those are some of the qualities, that I could probably say are really critical.
What kind of person should hire you as their coach?
And the kind of person, for me, the kind of person who wants to hire me as a coach
Yeah.
is one who's seeking the truth and who can engage with me in this space that is, like really keeping it real in this space, and somebody who, believes in themselves, and that means I'm there as a coach to really just blossom and bring that out, right? And somebody who is curious and willing to take a chance on themselves, I think is very critical. Those are the kind of people that I want to work with, is people who come in with a lot of curiosity and people who are giving themselves a chance to experience, transformation. Because at least for me, I know I could tell, even for my own journey, I know what that feels like, to be transformed. And so, I want to make sure, it's really good to see that to have a client that does that, and then, and for me also, the other thing too is the culture, cultural differences and people who are different. I think I've learned to work very well and maybe appreciate those differences, honor those differences. And that's kind of one of the things that makes so unique me as a client, as a coach, is because, again, I bring that even for my own cultural, journey and my own diversity journey. I could at least emphasize, be empathetic in walking that journey with a client who feels that they're stuck, or they've hit, they've hit like whatever the ceiling it is.
Yes, yes. Um, so tell us a little bit about any new projects or products that you have as a part of your business that you want us to know about.
Yeah, so I have quite a few exciting things that I have been actually I'm really focused on. One is showcasing some of the culture and how organizations can work with tools like some of the assessments to really harness the culture of the organization, but not even just from a very touch point. I usually try to make this unique
Mm-hmm.
because you have to also tackle the system that these organizations are working in, right? So that's one of the most unique things that I bring into, my coaching as perspective, because again, mainly because of my HR experience. So, I've worked with systems and I've worked with, processes, and I've worked with policies,
Mm-hmm.
and so I leverage those assessments like the DISC assessments, which we could do it from an organizational perspective, or the leadership circle profile, which to me is one of the most profound assessments that I've worked with leaders. So like the leadership circle profile, you have to be a leader because it's a 360. And one of the biggest things that I love particularly about that leadership circle profile is the fact that it also talks about identity. So when you're looking at all the other competencies that leaders bring, you know, a lot of people forget that middle piece, which is the identity piece of who they really are. And so I've used that from that perspective of leveraging inclusive leadership. So it's not just, you know, as a leader working in solos within the organization. And so those are some of the things that I've been working on with with a lot of the organizations. And even as people are coming back to work, you know, and what that would look like in terms of reconnecting, you know. But sometimes also organizations forget that, you know, it's the same people coming back. It's just the system did not allow them to flourish. The system did not allow them to be themselves within the workplace, right? So it's actually more the reverse. The organizations have to catch up to the people, right? Not the people have to come in and adopt the organization. And that's a mind shift that I've been working with organizations on, right? Otherwise, they'll end up, you know, the turnover they've said is like ridiculous, right? So, you know, if
we are in a very interesting time. I'm thrilled to not be doing HR or any kind of corporate work right now, but I'm enjoying sitting from the sidelines and watching some of what's going on, because I'm thrilled by the fact that a lot of people have used this time to come to terms with what they like and what they don't like about work, right? Because that's what I did, right? And I decided I wasn't coming back, right? So, and a lot of people are doing that, or deciding, I want to go do something else that's going to fulfill me, or I'm in a work environment that is horrible. And the idea of having to come back and be in that space with the same people is just not acceptable to me, because a lot of us were like, it was a little bit tolerable because we were remote working. But the idea of going back into the same foolishness in person, people are opting out of it, right? And so organizations are going to have to take a hard look at themselves and decide what they're going to do. And some of them are going to buckle down and double down on their bullshit, and I'll be blunt. And the other ones are going to decide to do something different. And they're the ones that will survive in the long term. Yeah. And they're the ones that will get the best talent. And the ones that don't want to change and don't want to do anything about their leadership and their management will be left behind, as well they should be, right? Yeah. Because people are realizing that there's more to life than working yourself to death. There's more to life than being in environments that treat you like crap, that disrespect you, that discriminate against you, right? And people are saying, we're not going to do this. And rightly so. And I think if COVID hadn't happened, people wouldn't be there. You know what I mean? But having time to sit in your house for a year really does allow you to evaluate a lot of things about work, about so many things. Because it's like, if we could be at home working, what do you mean everybody's got to come back to the office? What does that mean, right? And this whole we need to be together. Well, some of us didn't enjoy being with you. You know,
that's right.
You know,
that's
and,
right.
You know,
that's
these
right.
Conversations about DEI, and you and I have worked together professional and know each other very well.
Yeah.
And talked about these issues of DEI, and I'm thinking seriously about like having a conversation with a group of DEI coaches just about some of these things, because I'm fascinated by them, and I think it'd be very educational for people. But you can do all the DISC assessments, tests, profiles, whatever you want. If people do not want to change, there is only so far you can go, because America is a inherently racist country. There, I said it, right? And it is structured to benefit a specific group of people over everyone else. And our workplaces are microcosms of that system. So to expect to not deal with some of these issues in the workplace is not realistic, right? And so the question becomes, what are institutions prepared to do to address these things? And so it doesn't matter how much, assessments and whatever you do, people, bringing us in, primarily Black people, to carry these burdens. But then you give them their information and they don't want to do anything because they don't want to change, right? And it is going to require a major mind shift and actionable change on the part of white people. Because we are not in control of any of this. Yeah. All we can control is how we choose to respond to this system individually and collectively. But we cannot change the system. If we could have changed it, it'd be changed already. I tell people that all the time. Black people can't change this. No one else can change this but white people. right? And so it is their responsibility to do the work, educate themselves, and then align their actions with what they have learned. And so as those of you, God bless you, who are doing this work, and I say God bless you sincerely, because I could not do it anymore. I didn't even want to talk about it anymore by the time I left, because I saw how performative it was on the part of the majority of white leadership who are engaged in this work. They do it to make themselves feel good. They do it because they don't want to be called racist, right? But my thing is, do you care more about being called racist than you care about doing racist things? And we have got to get to a place as a society in America, and when I say we, I mean white people, because again, we don't have any control over this, where you care more about doing racist things than you do about being called racist, right? And so we have to get to a place where we are prepared to make major actions to change this stuff, right? And so if we're not willing to do that, all of these other things at the end of the day don't matter. We have people doing work that is important and that matters to them, but if you're not prepared to align your behavior or to require it of those who work for you, which is the other piece, accountability, right? Then it doesn't matter how much these consultants come in and do, because you're not prepared to act, right? Or you're not prepared to make the people who are under you behave differently. Because honestly, for me, it's no longer about how white people feel about me, right? Or other Black people in the workplace. It is about whether or not there is going to be accountability for what they do, and whether or not an organization is going to make people accountable by determining whether they get promoted, by deciding how much they get paid, and determining whether they get to keep their job if they don't act right, right? That's the only thing that will make people change. The rest of this stuff about making them feel good and how you feel about me and whether you like Black people, I don't need you to like me. I just need you to treat me as an equal, pay me equally. You know what I'm saying? That's what we need. We need that more than we need you to care about us and love us. We just want to be treated the same as you at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. And
so for us who are doing this work, well, for you all that are doing this work, because I'm doing different work. I'm trying to help us get out of this nonsense. That's what my work is. You're trying to help the system be better. I'm trying to help people who are in the system right now get out of it until it is better, because it is killing us. It is damaging us. And so it's like, until you are at a place as a white leader where you're willing not only hold yourself accountable, but hold the people who work for you accountable for the behavior, I don't know how you change this stuff. Honestly, I don't know how you change it. And so we are going to see in the next several years what America decides, who America decides it is. We will know next year is an election, right? So we're going to know who America is, whether it's going to go forward or whether it's going to go back to what it was doing, because it doesn't want to deal with these uncomfortable conversations. And so for those of you doing this work, I salute you, because it has to be done. Someone has to be willing to have these conversations with institutions and to give them the information they need to do the right thing if they so choose, right? But at the end of the day, they have to choose it. And that to me is the biggest struggle, is that they have to choose it and we can't make them choose it. We can just give them the information and keep putting it in front of them, but we've been doing that forever, And so for me, I'm at the place where, well, you know how I feel about all this because we've talked about it. But I just am like, I want Black women especially and Black people to not have to deal with this. I want us to have the choices and the options to choose not to, right? Those of us who want to, some of us are going to stay and we have to because we have to help, right? But I personally am done with helping them do right. I am like, I just want us to be free and to have the option to do something else if that's not what we want to do, because it is just, ridiculous in some of these workplaces what is happening. And they're having, their conversations and their listening sessions and their assessments. And then you see very little changing. You don't see the color changing. You don't see the behavior changing. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is that? And it's because there's no accountability. People just see it as an exercise that they're engaging in because the board asked them to, or they want to tell the board that they did it, or, everybody else is doing it, so they want to do it. but they don't actually want to take, the action steps, the hard action steps, right? The systemic action steps to make things change for people of color and other marginalized communities, because it's not just people of color that are suffering. I've recently had conversations with people who are disabled, from disabled communities, and some of the things that people have said to me is appalling. It's appalling, because once people feel like they can get away with mistreating one group of people, they will not hesitate to mistreat others, right? And so there has to be some kind of accountability. And so it makes me happy to know that people like you are doing what you're doing, because I know for you, for one, when you have conversations about this, you talk about accountability, right? But it's like a critical component that I don't always see in these conversations. A lot of us doing this work spend an inordinate amount of time trying to make the messaging palatable for white people. And I'm like, we have to stop doing that. Because it's not getting us anywhere and it's not helping them, right? And so this work has to be grounded in truth telling and accountability. You know what I'm saying? I'm done pontificating now. Okay.
And I love that. And you know what? The most important thing that you say there is a choice. We as consultants, when I do this work, it's that's it. Like, we're presenting this, but they have to always make that choice. And that choice is truth telling. And you have to respect that. And accountability, being able to call even the people under them out, is so critical, and holding everybody accountable
it's critical, because it's like the work that I'm doing now with helping people get out of hostile work environments. One thing that I know from all the years I've worked in HR and as an attorney, talking to outside counsel and dealing with these issues, is that employers know who the wrongdoers are. They know who the problematic managers are, right? They know who's being discriminatory. They know. If the leader doesn't know, HR knows. HR always knows, right? Eventually, it gets to HR. So the question becomes then, why are so many of these people allowed to remain, right? And they are. Because at some point, someone makes a calculation that they're worth more than the people who they're putting through crap. And so my thing is, if maybe more of them had to pay, right, they might make a different calculation, right? But because so many of us are in these environments, we do not know how to get out of them. We do not know that they owe us, because a lot of what they're doing is illegal, frankly, right? We either stay and put up with the crap, or we just leave, right? And go somewhere else where we either are treated better or find that we have traded one plantation for another, right? Until we finally get fed up and either leave permanently or finally get a lawyer and sue the pants off of them. And I'm like, I want us to figure out that there's a third way, that you don't have to do either one of those things, right? But I just feel like we're at a place where we're seeing organizations talk about diversity, equity, inclusion openly in a way that they haven't before. We're seeing huge companies talk about, they got commercials, they got ads, they got funds, they got whatever. But then when you lift the layers and you talk to the people that work there, you're finding out that they're not aligning what they're saying with how they treat people of color and other marginalized communities in their organizations. And so you don't see the color of their boards change and the composition of their boards change, and you don't see the composition and color of their management change. So my question is like, what is all of this for if you're not going to do anything different? That's the frustration to me. And in the meantime, you're promising people, you're giving people hope, but you have absolutely no intention of changing anything that you do. So for me, I just want us to exercise the third way and do something different. But get our coins. I'm always like, don't leave no money on the table. You know how I feel about that. Get your coins and go about your business, right? And if you want to start your own consultant business or whatever you want and work on it from the outside, do that. But don't subject yourself to these kinds of toxic environments, because while we're trying to fix these environments, people are going through hell. People are experiencing pure hell in some of these workplaces, and it really needs to end. What is the most important thing you've learned about yourself coaching other people?
And I think it's kind of goes back to kind of what you were talking about is is just learning who you are and what you bring, and really honoring that for yourself. And that has to be so big enough, right, to a point where when things are not right, like this doesn't even make sense, and I don't have to make myself small in order to fit the system, as you mentioned, it's this whole survival mode of responding to the system,
Yeah. Yeah.
that, and we all know that was never built for us anyway. And so maybe that's what I've learned the most, and that's kind of even what I kind of anchor and leverage when I'm working with my clients is how do you how do you stick to your truth,
Mm-hmm.
without feeling that, and it's hard, I mean, it's hard because you get knocked down and all that stuff, and sometimes it feels like, oh, you're the crazy one, like you don't know what you're talking about, and it's just being able to be bold enough to call it out, and be bold enough to walk away, and be bold enough to know your truth. um and that's it,
And to be
that's kind
bold
of,
enough to help other people do it as well, because
yes, and be bold that's right, yeah.
is to then be able to help other people do it. And that for me is why it's been such a good experience working with Black women coaches,
Hmm.
is because they have actually experienced these things
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about it, there is a recognition and validation and affirmation, because if you're in these environments, you have experienced all or part of these things yourself. And so you're best positioned to help other people either navigate their way through them or to navigate their way out of them, right? But it's harder when you haven't experienced it. It's all
Yeah.
theoretical to you, or you
Hmm.
dismiss it as not being real because
Yeah.
it's not your experience. So,
Yeah.
as I've said before, I think the work that you do and the work that so many Black women who are doing, this executive coaching, especially HR related centered coaching,
Yeah.
are making important changes and transformations in the lives of people, because it's very important for someone to have someone to talk to that can understand what their experience is and then help them make the choices, right, to change their lives, because the only person who can change your life is you, not your
Yeah.
coach, not anybody else. You have to, because you're the one who has to decide that you're going to do something different. Joyce, this has been a really great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you as always.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and my audience about the work that you do. I will be including your information in the description of the conversation, so that if people want to reach out to you, they can. And I do hope that you will join the directory when it goes live next month. Thanks again for participating in this conversation.
And thank you for share. Thank you for holding the space for us to actually share this. I think it's remarkable, and it's well deserved. So thank you.
Thank you so much.